Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Monday, September 18th, Town Council meeting. If you will please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We will now have a presentation by the Central Connecticut Health District on the walking competition trophy and plaque. You will need a microphone. There's one right there on the seat for you, and I think you just have to flip the switch up. No, not too big.
Solid gold, too.
So yeah, I hope it's
Is
not
this
gold.
on? Can you hear me?
I have to take a picture.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for letting me take a minute to present. My name is Ann Hartman. I'm the Assistant Director of the Central Connecticut Health District. And we have been doing the walking competition. This is the 8th year that we've been doing the walking competition. 7 years ago, we added another category. So there's the High Stepper Trophy. I think you can guess which one that is. And that's the town that has the most steps altogether. And then because we want to encourage as many people to participate as possible, we also have an impact award, and that is given to the town that has the most participants. So for the second year in a row, I am proud to say that Rocky Hill has won both of these awards. They also did the same last year, and I have to say this is a little bit of a trend. So Berlin won this trophy for 4 years in a row, the first 4 years that this competition was going, and they had kind of this lock on the competition that was blown away by Newington, and then we had the pandemic. And so on both of these awards, there is a mention of the people that we lost during that year, and we did not have a walking competition that year. As you may recall, the health district was doing COVID vaccine clinics, and we all were just, all our minds were in different places then. But we are happy to be back, and so you all have taken the reins and I think soundly dethroned Berlin from their lockstep hold on these. So I would like to present, I'm not sure who I would like to give these to, perhaps Lisa and the Deputy Mayor, if you would like to come up. You had 169 of your residents from your town participate in this. On average, they did around 258,000 steps apiece. And then your total steps for here was over 53 million for your town. And I also want to give thanks to Kelly Ayala. Did I say it right? You got it. And also your Parks and Rec department. Rita has been really helpful in getting this off the ground, as each of our towns has a representative. So I would like to present, let's give you the High Stepper Award. And Ed, the Impact Award. Here you go. Yeah. Awesome. Kelly, come on.
I'll take pictures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our office is going to miss those. People would come in, it was right in front. They'd be like, what is this thing? It's not ours, it belongs to you.
Well, it belongs to the residents. Right?
Belongs to the
Yes.
residents.
So here's to the residents.
The town. Here's to residents. And just a little plug. Part of the reason we do this is to remind ourselves that walking is an important part of our just being physically active. Physical activity, as one of the former directors of CDC said, is the closest thing that we have to a magic bullet to keeping us healthy. So just a reminder to just try to stay healthy, reduce our risk of diseases and things like COVID. Anyway, thank you. Sorry, I had to do that little plug. Thank you, everybody. Congratulations.
Thank you, Anne. All right, well, congratulations to all the residents who participated in that walk. And as Ms. Hartman said, it is so, so important to keep your heart and everything pumping and going, and walking is a wonderful way to do that. And of course, we're the champions, so all right. Moving on to public comment, this portion of the meeting is specifically set aside for comments from the public, who are asked to limit their comments to 2 minutes. Any person interested in providing public comment remotely should email publicmeetings@rockyhillct.gov prior to 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting, at which time a link will be provided to attend the meeting as well as instructions on how to participate. So I will open up the floor to public comment. And seeing none, we will move on.
Madam Mayor?
Oh,
Yeah, just
oh,
like
I'm
that.
sorry, I forgot, Joanne. Go ahead.
Problem.
Yes,
That's
the
okay.
floor is yours.
Okay, this is from Robert T.F. Downs, 10 Rod Highway, Rocky Hill. He's the Secretary for Sustainable Rocky Hill Task Force. It is, we need a Rocky Hill Affordable Housing Committee. Dear members of the Rocky Hill Town Council, I hope my message finds you well. I am writing to respectfully request the formation of an affordable housing committee within our community. The establishment of an affordable housing committee will provide invaluable guidance as our town seeks to address the present-day challenges that residents and prospective residents face with regard to access to affordable housing. This initiative aligns with Rocky Hill's stated goal of achieving a 10% composition of affordable housing. In the Connecticut Department of Housing, DOH, 2022 Affordable Housing Appeals listing, Rocky Hill was reported to have 8,843 dwellings, with only 454 classified as affordable housing units. This equates to a current affordable housing composition of approximately 5.13%. Looking over the past 5 years, one observes a slight improvement in terms of the availability of affordable housing in town. 2017 affordable housing composition was reported at roughly 4.87%. I would like to advise the members of the Town Council to consider the formation of an affordable housing committee as a necessary step toward achieving our sustainability goals. Increasing our affordable housing composition promotes economic diversity, enhances social equity, and supports a more inclusive and resilient community. Each step we take to increase the availability of affordable housing in Rocky Hill will push us closer to our stated goal of 10%. In fact, every 0.25% will earn us valuable points under the Sustainable CT framework. Our task force is eager to achieve silver for Rocky Hill this spring. We are not far off from gold certification, but an affordable housing committee must be established for our town to be eligible for advancement. With our town's upcoming housing development set to include affordable housing units, we have a unique opportunity to make substantial gains toward our stated goals. Establishing an affordable housing committee would not only catalyze our progress, but also garner additional points, positive repute, and progress for our community. An affordable housing committee would complement the town's efforts to draft a comprehensive affordable housing plan that, if implemented, could yield even more points and contribute significantly to Rocky Hill's sustainable development and economic growth. Furthermore, by creating an affordable housing committee, we can actively address the critical issue of housing at the local level by engaging with residents in an open dialogue and working collaboratively as mutual stakeholders in this community. I kindly urge you to consider this proposal and to take the necessary steps to establish an affordable housing committee. Your leadership in this matter will undoubtedly enhance Rocky Hill's standing as a vibrant, forward-thinking community. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Robert Downs.
Moving on to appointments and resignations. Deputy Mayor Sharmat,
No appointments or resignations?
Councilor Duff.
None at this time.
Moving on to approval of the minutes. A, Town Council meeting August 21st.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Town Council meeting minutes of August 21, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Councilor Thoreau? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Town Council special meeting, August 24th, 2023 minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Thoreau? Okay, thank you. Moving on to subcommittee reports, Finance.
Finance Committee met last Thursday, just a few items. There's a new copy printer program was awarded to a new entity. It's a very minimal increase from the last contract. The bidding was very competitive, and while we'll have a couple less copiers, we'll have a large-scale printer, which was needed by some departments, so that's going to be a welcome addition for them. We also voted in, and a number of these things are on the consent agenda, including the copy program, but a small increase in the hourly wage for the registrar of voters and deputy registrar of voters by 60 cents an hour. There are a number of what I would call housekeeping items as part of the normal year-end process for the town, kind of reclassifying some amounts from one account to another, has zero P&L impact to the town. It's just a kind of a bookkeeping and housekeeping situation. There's also, as part of the consent agenda, an approval of a tax refund to Kohl's, and this was as a result of what I call in quotes the mannequin case that was resolved, and this was the final resolution where there'll be a bit of a tax refund owed to Kohl's as a result of that. Regarding the monthly reports to our committee, there's nothing unusual noted and no significant variances. A couple things we questioned on, but everything was right in line, so we're happy about that. And that's it.
Government operations.
Well, that's me again. Hold on. Government operations met earlier today. We'll talk with regards to facilities. Firehouse 3 HVAC system replacement project update. The rooftop units being installed this week, and the complete installation should be done by October 2nd. There's an upcoming project working with Resource Lighting and Energy and Eversource to take advantage of rebate and efficiency incentive program for upgrading the field, the lighting at the various fields in town, including the high school field, and upgrading them to LED lights. These rebates will end in the not-too-distant future, so it's important to act soon. The lamps we currently have are no longer being produced. Funding by Eversource is done at 0% for 6 years, and we also have solar farm credits, which we're not able to get cash for, but we can use those credits toward about a year to year and a half worth of payments on these lights. So it's a good outcome as far as that goes. With regards to the school projects, the Griswold Middle School science classroom is complete other than some punch list items. Those should be done in the next couple of weeks. Similarly, the Griswold Middle School roof, the finishing installation over the next couple of weeks as well. The Stevens School HVAC Phase 1 is almost complete. They're waiting for a piece of equipment to arrive kind of the November-December timeframe, at which point they can then remove the window AC units and replace with regular glass windows. With regards to Straska Farm, which is now we should be referred to as Rock Hill Community Farms, that's the official name now.
It's going to be hard.
Yes. I'm going to take a little training.
I still say G Fox.
The town is contracted with a firm for soil remediation and site grading. They have recently started that process. They hope excavating will, begin later this month, or has started already, the excavating?
Starting the end of September.
Oh, it's starting this. Okay, that's right. Okay. With regards to the barn, the process of putting together bid specs to create a bid package so they can put that out to bid. Size-wise, they're thinking of maybe something in the 30 by 40 foot range or 30 by 36 foot range. That's still kind of be determined. Bidding hopefully to occur while excavating is occurring, but timing will depend on how that is progressing along. Pertaining to the Evans Road Brownfield Assessment Grant, there's $200,000 of grant to cover 3 phases of work, and that money should cover all 3 phases adequately. Phase 1 was recently completed as docs are being reviewed. Phase 2, negotiating the price. There's no timeline yet as far as Phase 2 goes. With regards to Elm Ridge Park upgrades, the Open Space and Conservation Committee tabled the project for now, as well as some need to be reflagged. They're reaching out to contractors and hope to have that done within the next few weeks. And they're also presenting the entire project to Planning and Zoning later this week. Glastonbury Avenue sidewalks, we did receive some low-SIP money for this project. REC has been waiting for final documentation from the state, and CROG is trying to help, so we need that before we can move on. And with regards to Century Hill Drive sidewalks, kind of a similar story, also waiting to receive final documentation for Phase 2, go to the documents for Phase 1. And we're scheduled to meet, I believe, the first Monday in October, correct? Is our next meeting scheduled?
October 7th.
So, October 7th. Okay, thank you. That is all.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to public safety.
Madam Mayor, Public Safety met earlier this evening. Fire reported that they had responded to 74 incidents, bringing their year-to-date total to 469. Training hours recorded 361, bringing the year-to-date training for firemen to 2,529 and a half hours. 0 firefighter injuries reported for the year total for August 22 at this time was 4. Staffing has been a bright spot. There are 2 new members, bringing the year-to-date total for new firefighters joining the ranks to 10. Total active members, total members 68, 61 active. The fire department now also helps with the emergency management, and they did report that the tabletop emergency planning event is on track for January of 2024. That's our mock emergency planning event that we would hold. From July, the start of the new fiscal year for the program where we get to bill for our responses to the I-91 stretch of highway that cuts through Rocky Hill, we have billed out $32,500 already in a couple months. So that's still going along well, and I know it's funded. Ambulance, our volunteer ambulance and the Aetna ambulance services have been in a process of reporting to us together, and but separately their numbers, and Councilor Prakash is working with them to consolidate reports and data so that we can easily assess what each ambulance service is doing for the town and get a clearer picture of the types of calls that they're going on. But they reported our volunteer ambulance reported 125 calls in August. The Health District, Charles Brown reported that RSVG virus peaks in October, and it is peaking in October, and will peak in October, and so that virus is up, and that mainly affects the young and the old. COVID hospitalization rate is starting to tick up, and that's the rate that they're watching the most closely for COVID at this point. The new variant that is out there that they are treating for with the new vaccine is an Omicron variant, and it is called EG.5. And that is seeing an uptick in hospitalizations due to EG.5 COVID infections. And then our free vaccination for this will be at the community center on October 25th and 26th. Mark your calendars. Aetna reported some interesting things, I believe, and one of which is that Rocky Hill has the distinction of, in their numbers and in their experiences, having the largest bystander CPR response, meaning our folks in Rocky Hill are trained in CPR, and they're willing to step in prior to emergency folks getting on site. When a bystander steps in on CPR, they're doing it at a rate of about 62% of the time. So that's a pretty high rate for our Good Samaritans. And when a bystander does CPR, the rate of save, as they call it, is 50%. So that's quite substantial. And what else? Police report. Police report 3,453 calls for service, 25 criminal arrests, motor vehicle accidents of 24, DUIs of 3, infractions issued 41, warnings issued 171, and town tickets issued 15. These are a little high, but about what we've been seeing right along since January of what we're doing to try to drive home the message to slow down and drive safely and follow good road practices. Training hours for the department is 253. The LPR cameras are working well, according to Chief Collette, and that information is helping us jump on stolen cars as soon as they enter into our boundaries. And so we might not be pursuing them, but they're leaving Rocky Hill quickly, and so the word's getting out, don't drive a stolen car into Rocky Hill to shop for more stolen cars opportunities in town. They have one light-duty patrolman out on light duty. They have one dispatcher out on FMLA. And we have 2 openings for police and 1 vacancy in dispatch at the moment. Our cars now, every car in the police fleet will be equipped with an opioid Narcan nose spray, which will help them to be able to respond in a lot of situations. So that's good news. And they reported a good turnout for National Night Out at Elm Ridge, which went over, I guess, very well. And our next meeting will be scheduled 5:30 on October 16th.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to senior liaison.
No report?
Okay. Land acquisition and farmland preservation.
We did meet on August 27th, and about the only thing we took up there was reviewing the issue of the barn to be built. The state granted us a grant for the barn, and a lot of things contingent on us doing the barn. Only a lot of time has passed, and the barn numbers are changing with inflation. And so the town is working, as Councilor Levine reported from Finance, I guess, that the bids are out, and we're working on trying to move that barn along as quickly as possible. The next meeting will be September 26th at 6 o'clock.
Okay. Liaison to the state rep and state senator.
No report?
School liaison.
Yeah, I do have a report, Madam Mayor. So, as you guys are probably aware, the school year started on August 31st. In the August meeting, though, before the start of the school year, the Board of Education met, and Mr. Stephen Slattery was appointed as the new Board of Education chair. Mr. Slattery will take Mr. Brian Dillon's place for the remainder of this Board of Ed term. Mr. Dillon stepped down from the board following 14 years of outstanding community service. And as the school liaison, I will miss collaborating with Mr. Dillon on behalf of this council. As partners, this council, under the leadership of Mayor Marada here, have consistently placed our schools and our students on one of our top priorities. And working with the BOE under Mr. Dillon's leadership, we were able to put together an impressive list of accomplishments in the last few years. If none of those accomplishments were more important than giving our students and parents the choice to attend school remotely or in person safely during the pandemic. And it remains one of the best decisions that were made by this council in consultation with the Board of Education and the school administration, Mr. Zito. So as a result, the students in Rocky Hill are continuing to perform exceptionally well on the state's standardized assessments, maintaining their excellent standing near the top of their peer group in mathematics and literacy, but more importantly, on the learning recovery from the pandemic, which is a metric which the state tracks now. So as evidenced by the strong annual student achievement scores, our students experience very little learning loss, despite several disruptions caused by the pandemic. This is an achievement that cannot be overstated, in my view. As the students in many other communities around the state and indeed around the nation, if you're paying attention to all those articles that come out in New York Times and Washington Post on a consistent basis at this point, a lot of those communities are struggling, students are struggling from recovering from that learning loss caused by the lack of in-person instruction during the pandemic. So again, this achievement from the Board of Ed, working with this council, cannot be overstated in my view, and I just want to thank the Board of Ed and Mr. Dillon for working with this council on this important topic in the last couple of years when the pandemic was like really at its peak. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that over the last several years, working in collaboration with Mr. Dillon and the Board of Education, the mayor and this council has funded significant improvements to our school facilities, including the construction of Moyer School in 2019, multiple HVAC systems, roofs, and ADA elevators, as well as improvements to several athletic facilities and science labs around the school districts. So as the school liaison, I will miss working with Mr. Dillon, but at the same time, I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Slattery as in his new role as the chairman of the Board of Education. So that's my report, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Capital Improvements Committee. Mr. Greenspan was not here.
I'm guessing they haven't met, did they? They didn't meet.
No.
We haven't met.
Okay. And Economic Development Subcommittee.
Probably didn't meet.
That was Mr. Smith.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right. Let's go on to the consent agenda, items A through F.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Counselor Thoreau? Thank you. Moving on to old business discussion, possible action, Memorial Naming Committee nominations. First, the Town Green to Veterans Memorial Green.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept the application to name the town green to Veterans Memorial Green as applied, as the application is stated. And recommended, and recommended by the naming.
Okay, that's a really long motion. Go ahead.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Counselor Thoreau? Thank you. And then number 2, a conference room in the Community Senior Center 2, the Donald G. Watson Memorial Room.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept the application as recommended by the naming committee for the, quote, the Donald G. Watson Memorial Room, as stated in their application.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
And just, that is the corrected title?
It is the
That is
corrected
That
title.
is the, I have the application here if you want to see it.
No, I just want to make sure, because I know we updated it last time. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Counselor Duff. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Counselor Thoreau? Thank you. Moving on to B, update on the Connecticut Deep SMM grant. Okay. Yeah, we'll have Mona. Mona's been for the past several weeks answering numerous questions.
You're good? Okay. So just a summary of where we are with the grant. It's actually been about a year ago that we had the initial grant of $700,000 with DEP. If you may recall, that was based on a co-collection plan, which would entail orange bags, green bags going into one trash barrel and separation manually at a different site. We did have issues with our current contractor, which we have a 4-year contract with. So we went back to the drawing board with DEP, came back with a revision, actually a couple number of reiterations of revisions, and we had presented a $200,000 proposal, which came, as I call it, in two prongs. One being the transfer station would have barrels there, and anyone in the town could take advantage, so we wanted to leave it townwide option. We also were putting forward a pilot group of 400 houses in a pre-identified area. It's basically, it mirrored the collection of one of the town's routes. So we had a meeting recently, last week, with DEP, Director of Public Works and I, and the Commissioner of DEP. And where we are now, they find that the prong of the transfer station looks very promising, which was good. Unfortunately, what we're looking at with DEP is they are finding, I guess, a high risk of failure on those situations where you're doing co-collection, or in our case, we had proposed a separate collection where the vendor would actually take a separate cart, drive it directly to Quantum, for example, and you wouldn't have to do that manual separation. Their concern is that unless we as a town were committing to unit-based pricing, kind of a little bit on the unit-based pricing. So basically, if we were doing the separate bags and putting them together, and that would mean we would, after the pilot, be asking the residents to pay for their own bags. So there was a cost back, but it was the onus on the resident. So that's why we're back doing an update here. We weren't sure as staff what the direction of the town or the council would be to support the unit-based pricing. With that, if we had a decision, could go forward and say we committed. Otherwise, I think we had a thought that we definitely want to stay with the promising portion, which is the transfer station. It's easy to run, whether without the DEP funding, that's something we could do. The other portion, actually, I think with the pilot is, and you saw, I think, a letter or an article in from West Haven. I've been in direct communication with West Hartford. They're finding that to ask residents to be a mandated paper bag is difficult for a town to do. Combined with we don't necessarily have even a sense of the tonnage that we would get in Rocky Hill. We really would like to see a pilot happen. So with all that said, staff still supporting the transfer station component, and actually would find that pilot would be a very good idea with or without the state funding. We could do a 400-house pilot for a half a year, I think, within our budget constraints.
So I'll give you a little bit of a background, historic background. And Mimi, you please chime in. So I went through my file from when CCSMM was first started, and Mimi and I used to sit on that. And you know, it's still there, and we meet like every 6 months or something. So the purpose of that formation was because this DEEP was looking to mandate unit-based pricing. And the concept is very simple. Unit-based pricing is a utility, and you pay for your service. It's no different than paying for your water or paying for your electricity. It theoretically generates a bill based on how much trash you use. Well, everyone was in an uproar. We were all terrified. Mira was closing. We formed this new group to study what's going on everywhere else, right? And then, you know, we started talking about co-collection, and we say, hey, if we can marry unit-based pricing and co-collection, maybe this would work. Maybe people would be interested. Okay. So we start going down that road, and DEEP says, well, and we had Kristen Brown. We hired our own lady, Pam Roach, right, to help us examine all of this. And the concept was, all right, we need to know, are people actually disposing of their waste properly? Are we diverting it properly? And in order to do that, we need to separate the garbage literally pull apart the garbage bags on the floor of wherever we're hauling it to. And Deep's consultants said to us, Mira will do that. Well, Mira decided they were not going to do that. So we were stuck. And then it was, where do we send the organics? Because there was no place to go, and it was extremely dangerous. That was the whole thing. It was just a liability. They don't want people slipping and falling and ripping open garbage bags. So we came up with another concept where we said, all right, why don't we just haul the organics on their own to the anaerobic digester in Southington, right? Which looks like a silly plan, and we recognize that because you're traveling in this direction with your trash, you're traveling in this direction with your organics, you're doubling your tipping fees, but that was our only option if we wanted to comply with the DEEP grant. So as we're waiting for Meriden's pilot program to come in, that data was never presented, and to this day, Meriden still does not have a really, really good handle on what's happening, what participation looks like. And many municipalities are struggling with an exceptionally low participation rate, but they're still trying. So we said, okay, we're still going to try. Well, then they called Mona, and now all of a sudden they said, well, no, that concept is a failure. So we want you to go back to square one. Well, square one is letting our hauler take everything up to Murphy Road and separating it there. Well, they can't do that. They're not permitted to do that. Now, the good news is they have a permit application in, but that's been pending for as long as we've been having this conversation. Is it going to pass? I don't know. So let's just assume Murphy Road gets the permit, right? We haul everything there. We pay a tipping fee there. They source separate it. It still has to go somewhere. The only place it can go is back to Quantum, which anyone can figure out is an even longer route to get from Hartford to Southington than from Rocky Hill to Southington. But this is now what DEEP wants to see. And the way that municipalities cover the cost of all of this is they charge the residents a fee per bag. You get 1 to 2 garbage bags, 15-gallon garbage bags per week, and you get 1 5-gallon maybe food green bag per week, and you pay for those. If you want more, arguably you will get them if you ask for them, but you have to ask for them. So it becomes a bit of an administrative nightmare. That's why we wanted to do a small program with just 400 households. But now we're sort of in this really odd predicament. And, luckily with Joe Lentini's help and Mona and Ray started to look at, well, can we do something in that transfer station, right, which would save money for us and still allow us to move forward. Now DEEP is saying, which I think is the biggest problem in all of this, now DEEP is saying to us, well, wait a minute, we're not going to give you the grant money unless you commit to requiring your residents to participate in a permanent unit-based pricing program. Now, the problem with that is that's a key term that was never, ever negotiated or even introduced from 2019 until today, until that conversation. And in speaking with other municipalities, they have said the same thing. It was a surprise, and they're not comfortable with it. Some of them have moved ahead. Some of them, they have to decide halfway through their pilot program if they're going to continue with the pilot program because there's no basis or history to look to before you commit your municipality to this. So this is sort of the issue we have before us. So that's up for discussion.
So the unit-based pricing based on Rocky Hill's tonnage to wherever they will weigh it and say, hey, it had 30 tons. And then they divide that equally among our 20,000 residential sites or whatever, or 15,000 residential properties, and everybody pays the same?
No, so you literally won't get the bill.
Oh, all right, it'll be
Yeah.
paid through the budget, and that will go into your tax, into the mill
No,
rate?
what the unit-based portion is actually where the pilot, for example, will be your orange bag is roughly 30 cents, but then when you go live with this, then your orange bag becomes 80 cents. They will purchase, I've looked at the 15 towns that do have their grants, and it seems that what they will do is either find a series of local grocery stores, they may decide to use their transfer station, but wherever it is that the resident is expected to buy their bags at the higher price, town would get a portion of that as a source of revenue to offset our new increased bill.
So essentially, it's an additional cost to the municipality, and that cost gets passed down to the taxpayer through the sale of bags. And the ultimate goal is just to reduce the amount of trash that we're putting out. So
Yeah, I feel like in the year plus that I've been, somewhat involved in this, I feel like we've gotten about 6 different definitions of unit-based pricing. I mean, that's my problem here. The term, I think, is so meaningless that we should commit to not using it anymore, quite frankly. The initial concept, as I understood it, okay, unit-based, what is the unit? I thought initially that the unit was the household. Unit-based pricing, that you charge per household based on what they generate. I mean, that's the term seems to me, and I thought at some point that's how it was described. But no, now it just sounds like unit-based pricing means people paying for bags. I mean, why wouldn't we just call it that?
it is actually the other name is pay as you throw.
Correct.
Okay, but again, what does that mean? Pay as you throw. That suggests to me that there's some type of a household by household tracking mechanism that the more a given household discards, the more they will pay for pickup. But that's not what it means. There is no tracking system to do that. So once again, this terminology I feel like is really bogging us down because it's so confusing to the point of being meaningless.
It is terribly confusing, and the tracking is really that the point of the pilot programs and other municipalities is because we want to start tracking it and literally counting how many bags and are people participating. But I agree, at the end of the day, what we're really doing is just requiring that people only put out 1 or 2 bags of garbage per week. And no matter what we want to call that's essentially what it is, 1 or 2 bags of garbage per week. And the definition, I think, has changed just because, I can't explain it because that's through deep, but just there's so many different models of this right now, it's just confusing.
Yeah, agreed. I'm glad we agree on that. So question is, I mean, is it supposed to be mandatory? I mean, Madam Mayor, when
Yes.
you okay. So again, this whole deal, whatever we call the pricing, it's not a pricing thing. It's just a mandated limit on how you dispose of your garbage. You're going to get X number of bags per month, and that's all you can.
Well, I think part of the issue is, and so I brought the 2020 study, and I just found it in my file, so we can put it in the next packet. But there was a study, and it does explain unit-based pricing is a utility, blah, blah, blah. But I think one of the issues is that it's just complicated. Yeah,
I agree, and I think that we get bogged down. I feel like DEEP itself has sort of redefined these terms as we've gone, which has just not been helpful.
Well, I think that part of the pushback from the municipalities up at the state legislature is that they don't want to have to mandate this, right? And DEEP wants to see it mandated. And I think the lawmakers are reluctant to force municipalities into certain policies at the local level. And unfortunately, there's just not enough data out there. The data that is out there is small, and it's showing a lack of participation. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. It's just how much do we want to How much do we want to try? And what is ultimately, what have we gained? What is the benefit, right? So maybe we're changing patterns, and that's a good thing, right? Little by little.
I guess I also want to put on the record, I've always had this nagging sense from the very beginning that this concept was oversold to us, this estimate that 30% of typical household waste is organic matter, leftover food. I just find that unfathomable. I mean, there's a lot of households in this town have, garbage disposals. That's where the I know my household, between what we compost and what goes down the sink, 30%, it's more like 3%, I think. And I suspect that that's very typical. So, conceptually, I get it, and we should be, if there's a way to actually turn some household waste into a good, into a type of biofuel, that makes sense. But I had this nagging sense that we're not being given honest data to justify this.
Yeah, that's a great point you made, Bill. I agree that 30%, especially, and if you have dogs, you can even bring that percentage down further. Right. But I guess my question, Mona, because you've been really on top of all this and understand the numbers. At a high level, does it sound like the $700,000 grant is not, as a net to us, not really going to be $700,000 because it'd be additional cost that we didn't know about, and all of a sudden it's not really $700,000 net to us. It's a small number, or maybe it even goes the other way where it's a net cost to us, or?
Yeah. I think originally the $700,000 grant was truly, the funds were there. What we didn't see is the next portion, which was talking about when you go live with this on your own, you don't have to pay $700,000 because you're going to collect $300,000 in bag sales, and you're going to be saving about $300,000 in tipping fees, which I think still we haven't been able to confirm that. I'm just going to kind of.
And
But I guess
that's
$300,000, but
Yeah.
saving $300,000 in
Yeah.
bag fee, that's money you're getting from the residents.
Correct.
So
So have you
That's-
saved?
But that
from a resident,
assumes.
that's not a good deal.
No, well, not only that, but that presumes, I think, probably to your point, is that you have 100% participation.
Correct.
Right? If you don't have 100% participation, there's no way you're making that kind of income to afford to drive these trucks everywhere and pay double tipping fees.
Well,
just,
we'd have to price it to get that 300,000, right? Whatever number participate, you got to generate enough to pay that 700,000, right? So we'd be forcing, it'd be artificial pricing, so to speak. It just wouldn't be right for the households.
Well, I think the challenge is that our bill is going up no matter what. And I get, we're at a staring contest with this market where I understand at the state level, they would like to see, if I'm Murphy Road or if I'm in this business, I need to have a dedicated customer base to make the investments in the infrastructure. And that's why you want to have towns that will say, yes, we're going to do this moving forward. Now we're all kind of staring at each other because there's no place to send it, but they don't have a market. But meanwhile, our prices are going to go up no matter what. I mean, we've got our contract with our hauler, who doesn't seem like they worked with us particularly well over the last year, and maybe that's because their business incentives are different from ours as a municipality. And we need to do something to control our costs. I don't know if this is the way, but it's easy, and I get why no one wants to pass a vote because this is, or no one wants to put it forward because it sounds like a pain to manage, especially in the beginning with all the education. I mean, we all have to buy garbage bags every day anyways. I mean, I don't know how much my giant thing of happy bags costs versus this thing, but it doesn't seem like it's a giant amount, but it's behavior change and it's the government making you do something, which I know people don't like. But we have to do something to figure out. I mean, it's a little odd to me. I mean, this seems like a very Connecticut approach where every town has to figure out its own way because there are places all throughout New England who use this as their main mode of disposing their waste. I mean, we should be able to get that data from a comparable town to at least come up with an estimate, right?
Yeah,
I just want, because I know we're going to go off onto the bags, but we really just kind of, maybe I didn't emphasize that I believe that, and working with Joe Lentini, that, and our actual contractor, that what we had in our original and still exists in our application is that to not go to the route of the bag sale. We had presented that we were having actually the purchase of a different cart, so we would just put your food in the cart, take it directly to Quantum, and you're done. We're not buying a lot of bags. We're not hiring somebody to be on the store and on the floor and sorting out your dirty trash and wet and so forth. It seems that, and that somewhat mirrored what West Hartford is doing. They actually went out to do townwide, and they ended up with, I think, Blue Earth, that was their vendor, who just, you put it in the separate bin and off it goes on its own. It's not co-collection, it's separate.
Is that the pilot? Is that when you mentioned the pilot of the 400 houses?
That's correct. That's,
that
and we
would
still
be
believe
its
that
own
would.
cart, not bag
Right.
sales.
Yeah.
Okay.
To do it townwide, I mean, initially it would be expensive. No doubt we'd be buying the barrel for the entire, maybe 6,000 residents. Wouldn't suggest you do it that way. You'd want to probably phase it in gradually. But to do that, at least you're buying the one cart, and that would be lasting you about 10 years. 10-year life is from what I'm hearing from Joe. So we're not buying bags every month for 10 years. It's a one-time purchase up front, and then having that. The pushback we were getting from the DEP is that that would accomplish the situation, but they don't feel that having it not be mandatory would be forceful enough to cause townwide behavioral change. We'd like to see the pilot.
Yeah, so if our
try.
problem is data, and it's one thing if we're talking about getting $700,000, which is a substantial amount of money. If we're now looking at what I thought I heard was $200,000 over 2 prongs, how much is that pilot just to get our own data? Would that cost us with or without DEEP?
I think that it'd be worth it for us. It's like I said, with or without the grant, I think definitely do the transfer station, which they like. If they want to fund that alone, that's fine. But definitely we should try at least that 400-house pilot to get a sense of what do our residents do? What is the tonnage? We have 6,000 customers. So if we tested 400 houses, is it 9 pounds per week? Is it 2 pounds per week? At least we can extrapolate an idea. At this point, we don't have the numbers.
And could we use any of the funding that we get from the bottle bill towards this to offset that cost?
From the
NIPS
NIPS.
Cleaning
money?
up litter.
The cleaning
It's
up.
Cleaning up, any type of cleanup. Arguably. I mean,
We use it to hire
We should look at,
yeah.
coordinator,
we
right?
should look
Yeah.
at the, in all honesty, non-reoccurring. If we admire that non-reoccurring fund, it does have some line item in there that is undesignated, and perhaps if it's something we felt strongly about, this may be the time that we decide to designate at least a portion of that for a purpose.
I think we're coming full circle here and relying on our own staff and expertise, because I think we all were on council when Mira came to us and under the old town manager offered us a contract that had to be signed in 30 days. And we all said, no, we're willing to play that game of chicken with you, no.
Yeah.
Then we move on to another, and I don't want to use the word dishonest, but less than authentic broker deep on this whole issue, which now has taken us way down the road. And again, we don't have, none of the information is panning out. And we have to take, I guess, maybe our destiny into our own hands in terms of our staff recommendations as to how to move forward. But it's been a process of people kind of just trying to force us quickly into a decision and saying, hey, just do this. And none of it seems to be accurate.
Can I pose a question to Mona? Mona, you talked about a cart. You're talking about at the household level that each house would have the third cart?
Correct.
So you're going to roll out the green one for regular waste, the blue one for your recyclables, now the pink one, the smaller pink one with your
When you're-
food garbage?
When your trash goes, on
Yes.
your
Yeah.
green trash day, you take up your
The
organic.
third cart.
Yeah.
Okay, because right now I do one hand, one blue and the green. Now you're talking about a second
It's
trip.
30. It's a 30. It is
We
a,
need to bungee it.
I'd say unfortunately, because in order to make this pilot work smoothly with the present vendor, it would be probably bigger than you'd want to put your little bag of food in. It's a 32-gallon cart, but yes, it would be a third, and it would be for the pilot. We really just need to get a sense of, what is our collection? We need some real honest numbers of what's happening. So I'd say we'd probably initially buy those 30-gallon, 400 units. Our current trash hauler is okay with doing the little direct route just to give us a test, weighing it when it arrives. We know what happens. And our current disposal has no problem with it because it'll be probably a small tonnage, so it wouldn't impact really the contract. So all vendors are agreeable to trying a 400 house pilot.
So what are we putting, so this hypothetical, so I now have this 30-gallon cart for food waste. So what am I putting in there? Am I putting like bags of garbage, or I'm like special bags or whatever, random, baggies or whatever?
Yeah.
Because then if I do that, then someone has to separate that, right? Because now they have
No, there's no separation, and I never thought I'd say this in one sentence, but that's the beauty of it. I think I've
So
done it too.
the organic is mixed in with
your
bags?
little bag from your kitchen counter. If you put, tonight was chicken and a little bit of broccoli and tie them up, and there it goes, just like you'd put your recycle in the recycle or your garbage, and
Okay.
so this would just be your tiny little tie it up and drop it in
Okay.
your separate. And we've even thought of our nice stickers on the
and
side
so-
of the cart to say, this is your food cart, so don't put your recycling in it.
And so what do you do with the larger hard goods, you're throwing out something like a broken chair or other consumer goods that end up in the hard good, you know what I mean? I have that question, and then I also have, just a,
If they
general
need that
question.
bags, if they require bags, for the big cart,
Yeah,
I know.
some things don't lend themselves. I throw out a broken curtain rod. It doesn't conform, and it pokes through and everything else. And then how do
I
we?
think Joe Lintony's like shaking over there now because you're throwing stuff in the cart that doesn't belong in the cart.
expecting to
Oh
be
my
tagged.
gosh.
Yeah, and then folks that are just plain aren't going to comply. How do we? What's our recourse to keep our town clean?
Yeah.
Well, that's the pilot, right? If
Well-
it turns out that it doesn't work,
There's
then
there's
won't
another
do it.
risk here that I don't think we've talked about, and I'm going to scare Joe again here, so I apologize. So first off, I want to just back up a little bit on what you said. Is there a limit? It sounds like there's a limitation to how much you can put into this container,
Oh,
correct?
yes, definitely.
So there's a little bit of statistics here in the sense of 400, a sample of 400 population. Question now becomes, are we mixing it up between households of 5, households of 6, households of 2, households of 1?
No,
How do we get that?
Joe had worked on looking at the townwide map, and we chose actually the day that the hauler didn't have an afternoon trip. So it was basically mirroring an existing route. So it would be all of you in that same neighborhood, the same day as your trash, then here comes your food.
Okay, because Counselor Sullivan triggered a thought for me, and then I think you made me think of this even further, which is we're trying this, which is great. We went ahead down the right path. There's no doubt. But I still think that at the end of the day or end of the week, we're going to have, the Amazon of the world is not going to stop. We're going to get, family of 5, we're going to have a ton of cardboards, for example, right? We're still going to go down to the transfer station. If we don't have enough, if we need more than one container, we're still going to go down to the transfer station. All right. So we're still going down to the transfer station. So the question or the risk here is, how do we calculate that where I'm going to guess the transfer station is going to get really busy. So I think that's something we have to think about based on how we're testing this. So that's just my thought.
What we had in place for the transfer station, and Joe, you can jump in if you wish. But what we had for the transfer station in our grant, well, I'll go back a little bit. We're saying, how would we know who's putting what in? We do have our transfer station staff that goes around and would be checking the barrels to make sure that you didn't put your cardboard on top of your food. So we'll do that for a portion. But also the transfer station, we have in place we will have in place the scanner. So if you have, for example, we have the same software for the Parks and Rec program. You get your ID card. We can tag in that I went to the transfer station, so you would know who went. You've got which household went, how often they went, and then that's food only, so we can measure it easily too. That all goes off on the same route.
That's genius.
Great.
And Chris, before I forget, I want to just say, respond to something you said about like getting started and all that kind of stuff. I had a really cool conversation with someone in another community who's going through this, and there's a vendor out there that can provide a process for all 3 of the trash. So there's a hauler who can come and take your trash, your recycling, and your organics all at once, bring it to one place, and take care of all of it and produce clean energy. I mean, it's like, the most amazing thing. Who's looking to do stuff like this in Connecticut, and this certain municipality is actually meeting with them to look into that. And it would likely take about 5 years, to get the permitting and get it up to speed. So we were talking about, like, maybe that's where we begin to regionalize, right? Because it would be more effective for us to just send our stuff to another town and pay that one tipping fee, one trip, and not get involved. And then this person said to me, well, really, rather than the onus being on 169 municipalities to try to figure this out, right, the state should take some responsibility here and kind of say, okay, we need, just by way of example, 20 of these plants, right, and then break us up. And I, you want to always maintain your local autonomy. So it's difficult for me to say it, but you break it up like we do with our water and other things into these regions, and then you tell us how much we have to pay you. Right? Here's all our stuff. You figure it out and get involved that way. So that's something that I'd like to bring up to CCSMM at our next meeting to see if there's an appetite for that. I suspect that 169 municipalities would be totally opposed to that, just because nobody likes that regionalization word. But
Well, it sounds like a bunch of almost mini mirrors.
it's like mini mirrors, yes.
No one's going to want the plant in their town. That's going to be the problem.
Well, yeah,
Unless there's a
and
big
some
incentive to
do. Some do. I mean, honestly, if we could put it somewhere in our community, it would, and it wasn't too, cumbersome. It's really a genius idea. But I just think that's a more realistic way in the future. And I just wanted to bring that up.
So is there an action that or guidance that staff is looking for the council to provide? Like,
I think so.
where do we go from here?
I think we have to decide, right, whether we want to mandate unit-based pricing
Correct.
in order to accept the grant from DEEP. That was basically the instructions that Mona received.
So if we don't do that, then both prongs we would have to fund ourselves. Is that an accurate thing?
Present it to DEP that we don't have the commitment to mandate unit base, and they may choose to fund the transfer station portion, which they felt was promising. Perhaps they will not fund any of them, and then we'll have to come back probably to finance and say, do we want to, use a non-recurring or whatever the direction. But I think at this point, to know how to respond back to them is, are we putting that into the application and seeing if we do or don't?
Arguably, you can put in an opt-out and see if they're amenable to an opt-out.
And just to be clear, right now, when we use the phrase unit-based pricing, what it means tonight is people have to use the bags.
Absolutely.
Okay, I really wish we would just say that, honestly, because unit-based pricing is just this muddle, and that does not suggest buy bags. I just don't get it.
We can put an asterisk and say unit equal to bag.
Unit bag pricing. Yeah. I agree.
Sullivan way.
One more question. I
Footnote.
apologize if you already, and maybe I didn't catch this or maybe I didn't understand it, but on a worst-case scenario, if we don't receive a grant, and have we calculated the worst-case scenario based on what it's going to cost the town, or what's the impact for next budget season?
As we stay with the pilot, it would be, if we did both, prongs, as I call it, then we're looking at, it'd be for the full year, it'd be at $200,000. If we're going to do a half year, then it'd probably be half that. And again, the largest piece of it being to get the 400 carts. And there is a portion that would be the additional transportation to tell, for example, Trash Away, pick up this extra route. And it's really them running the extra route. So that's really what the estimate is. It's an annual 200. As time goes forward, then obviously we just, calculate it from there.
And do we know so there'd be the 200 that we'd be out for the carts, but there's a potential for savings, or is there a potential for savings if it does turn out that number of organics is closer to 20, 30% instead of the low end of the range? Or
Say at this point, no, because we're
So
right now
tiny with the pilot.
expecting that we're either going to have one vendor saying this is the tipping fee or the other vendor. I think at this point, it would be too early to say it's,
so it's just paying for the data, basically.
right, yeah, we're not having that funding source to come in and save us. So, I mean, actually going, if we went town-wide, it would definitely be an expensive venture for us, but we'd have to decide if that's the way we wanted to go.
I'd like to know, like, what, if you take what potential benefit we have here from this program, which just seems very unwieldy, if you compare that to the potential benefit from a really intensive push to get people to compost at home, what, maybe you wouldn't have as much of a savings of waste, but if it's at a tiny fraction of the expense and all these moving parts that we're talking about here, I'd rather try that first, quite frankly.
Or maybe that's just a good stepping stone, at least, you start there, then track progress, and then somehow, or just get people to say, surveys or whatever, and then you kind of take your next step based on that, or,
And I think it's just sustainable. Rocky Hill has started a pilot like that, right? A small subscription-based, like, lottery system kind of program. So there's no reason why that can't be expanded, right? And teaching people to compost at home. Because if you go to the anaerobic digester, we had this conversation today, it seems like, and I can't say with absolute authority, but it seems like the bulk of the waste that's being accepted is from your major food processors, right? Like the huge folks, the huge corporations, the supermarkets, everyone who's making food, all the expired stuff. And this is just a very small fraction that's coming from households. So how much is an individual household actually contributing to saving the environment, right? It's really, we should all probably be thinking about how do we get these big food producers to comply, right? Even the schools, which we've started, get them to comply. And then at the grassroots level, well, let's try to encourage the households to do it. But I think that's where we would like to be. Well, we should put it to vote because we can talk all night. So I think the motion would be, do we want to accept the grant with the language that mandates pay as you throw as defined by DEEP,
Unit-based pricing.
unit-based pricing, at the end of the pilot?
Does my screen blanked out. Does the agenda say possible action? I thought it was just an update.
Yeah, that's what
yeah.
Is it just an
wondering that,
update? Well, I think, but Mona needs to respond
It does
to
say
DEEP.
update. They may change. They want to change that.
So I mean, we can. I just don't want to put it off because if we can, she can negotiate with them. I don't know, but either way, we just want to get started on something. And Joe's got a phenomenal program he's lined up.
Yeah, I think we've passed the conversation.
Okay, so this is a request. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, if you could just repeat what your understanding of what's before
So
us
if
right
we
now.
could put a motion on the table to decide whether we want to accept DEEP's offer to mandate unit-based pricing at the conclusion of our pilot program.
Do we have an offer or proposal? Is it in writing? I'm sure we know exactly, because again, there's that dreaded term again, unit-based pricing, and I'm again, I'm not really sure what we're asking for, committing to here, sitting here right now. We've had a lot of talk and descriptions of what the state is offering, but it just feels like such a moving target. I feel like that we would be voting for something very abstract right now.
It essentially means using orange bags for trash, up to 2 per week, and green bags up to 1 for food scraps per week, and the town selling those bags to the community.
Just for the pilot, though.
After the pilot.
No, after the pilot.
After the pilot.
Grant
Okay.
will cover the bags during the pilot. After the pilot, they would like us to put into our application that we would agree to unit-based pricing after the pilot. So
Okay.
they would purchase bags in the grant funds And after the grant ended, during the pilot end, we would be expected to commit to continue that unit base by giving the cost to the residents.
So we'll be required to
Very
commit
clear.
now, no matter how the pilot turns out, whether it succeeds or not?
That is the
That's the
concern.
problem.
Question.
I had the same question.
That's the problem,
Thank you.
Bill.
Who's like, is that a
That's the
contract? Because
Well, it is. And so what's happening is that they're going to, once people say, yes, we're ready, let's sign the paperwork, they say, oh, by the way, you need to commit to unit-based pricing within so many months of your program. And we're all like, but wait a minute, that was never, ever presented to us.
To me, that suggests to me a lack of confidence that the pilot program is going to succeed, because you're trying to lock us in now.
Yeah, so they'll just speak on its merits, and then it just happens anyway.
Right.
I don't even see how that could be, because that would change our agreement with our existing hauler. I mean, could we add some sort of qualifier that says, provided such a program could be developed or anything like that?
Don't they approve all those contracts anyway, so they can,
I mean, because it doesn't seem like we even know what we would be agreeing to, and we have to renegotiate with our hauler
Right.
to do that.
Well, wait, maybe what we do then tonight is we just let Mona go back to the table, go talk to Deep, let them know what we're thinking, and if they can't come to the table, then she can come back and tell us, and we'll just move forward with our own program if that's the way we want to go. If not,
The stakes were different when it was a much larger pile of grant money as well.
yeah. But we do owe them a response, and that's the thing. And I don't want to keep delaying it. And unfortunately, they're the ones who have delayed it for months and months with these continuous questions. Like once a month, they send Mona a list of new questions, and ultimately we got here with this final demand, which we thought was bizarre. But then when you speak to other municipalities, they're like, oh yeah, that's the way it is.
Right.
I just feel like at this point, the onus is on Deep to put in writing what they think it is right now. We're getting summaries here based on
I
secondhand
actually
information.
attempted that. I have not gotten a written response back. It's unfortunate. It really is. Yeah, I understand.
I mean, worst case scenario, we can have Chris Nelson come in and he can try to explain it. But I don't know that he'd be willing to do that.
I think Councilor Sullivan is right. I think we need something that, okay, this one piece of paper is exactly how they want to do, and then we either agree to it or we don't agree to it. Not, because all these conversations are like, well, it's this, and like you said, the conversation keeps changing, so like you said, we need like something concrete on a piece of paper that we either say yay or nay to, and then.
So maybe it's as simple as shooting them an email, and then they can respond, yes, this is my understanding, and yes, you're
Absolutely.
correct. That's what it is.
Get a final determination.
Yeah.
I will.
All right. We'll wait. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on to new business A, discussion possible action, proposed ordinance for property tax exemption for farm machinery.
Sure, Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose a motion to approve the ordinance for property tax exemption for farm machinery.
A second?
Any discussion? Anything? No? Yeah, no. Okay, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Mimi? Okay, thank you. Discussion, possible action, proposed ordinance for property tax exemption for buildings used in farming.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose a motion to accept the ordinance for property tax exemption for buildings used in farming.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Councilor Thoreau? Thank you. Okay, now moving on to C, update Sustainable Rocky Hill Task Force status report.
Good evening. I have a presentation for
Name and address for the record.
My name is Derek Kalin, 116 Ridgewood Drive. I chair the Sustainable Rocky Hill Task Force. I have a presentation to make, PowerPoint, just to make things visually interesting for you all.
Are you lowering the screen or no?
Yes, if Raymond would.
Cue the screen, Raymond. Oh, we don't see the screen. I always forget. I don't know why we never got that double-sided. Yeah. Yeah. Is that the same?
Oops. All right, can you all see this?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so good evening. So I am, as I mentioned, the chair of the Sustainability Task Force. The town council 1 year ago this month created the task force, and we started our work back in January, so it seems very fitting to come before you all and let you know what we've been doing. My hope with this presentation is that I can share what we have done so far and who we are and what we're trying to do, and also have a conversation with you folks about what we should be doing in the future. So I have a couple of recommendations, but I'd love to get this body's recommendations on what we should be doing in order to pursue sustainability. So with that in mind, let me real quick just say who we are. So we are a body that of about 6 people now. We were 7 when we were appointed, and then we had 1 resignation over the summer. I'm the chair, Haritha Nagabandi is the vice chair, Robert Downs is the secretary, and then we also have Alan Baglia, Ed Ciccarello, and Saima Koser as members. We're the formally appointed members of the town council, but I want to acknowledge, or the task force, but I want to acknowledge that the task force actually interfaces with a lot of members of the community. Our meetings are open to the public, and we always have at least 1 or 2 people who have a sustainability issue that they want to tackle. And so to say, oh yeah, the task force is just those 6 people is kind of underselling the community that's involved with sustainability work. So that being said, the resolution that created us gave us 3 different goals, one of which is to help the town move forward in sustainable CT accreditation. And by the way, I feel free to stop me at any point if you have a question. This presentation should go for about 10 minutes if I don't stop, but I welcome you folks to stop me if you have a question. We also are promoting issues related to sustainability. And then a lot of our work is community facing, so community education. How do you compost? How do you recycle? How do you plant pollinators, right? What actions can the community take in order to promote sustainability for the town? So part of our work is community oriented, part of our work is towards the staff and towards the government saying, here are some policies that you can pursue in order to move forward in sustainable CT certification. So we are bronze within the Sustainable CT framework. We got bronze in September of 2022, and they have been continuously rolling out new levels of certification. So gold was unlocked this year. We're currently shooting to go for silver. And that's us getting the award back in the fall. So I wanted to acknowledge that Pamela Roach put together the packet that got us to bronze before. And a lot of the task force members were volunteers supporting Pam in preparing that submission. Okay, so this is the Sustainable CT framework. It's huge, and it actually has more items in it than you would expect with a name like sustainability. So there are certainly things that you would expect, like well-stewarded land and natural resources, strategic materials management, renewable energy, and things like that. But there are also actions within the Sustainable CT framework that you might not expect. Equity, affordable housing, vibrant and creative cultural ecosystems. I won't go into a lot of detail here because this is a lot to throw at you, but I might return to this slide when we're talking about what the vision is for the future.
Is this framework, who designed this framework?
So Sustainable CT is a nonprofit based in Connecticut, and they created this framework. I think the origins of Sustainable CT is that it was part of a university, and then they kind of spun it out into a separate body.
Yeah, because it looks like, a big list. Like
It's a big list, which I view as a positive thing because there's a lot of different ways that the town can get points. So it's a menu of options that we have if we want to move forward in certification. So basically the way it works is that we do actions and we record them. We submit those actions at 2 review points, one in the fall, one in the spring, or one in August. So we just passed one of the options, and another one in April. And then if we exceed a certain threshold and do certain things, then we move up in our certification. And I want to be clear that these actions that we can take can both be events, like the farmers market, or like campaigns that we do to like raise awareness of municipal energy, or they can be policy. So when you all passed a Complete Streets resolution during the summer, that got us points under the framework. So what have we done in 2023? The 3 big buckets that we could put ourselves into, strategic materials management, pollinator promotion, and Complete Streets. These are the things that have gotten us the most prospective points under the framework, right? So there have been a ton of compost education events organized by Sustainable CT, the Sustainable Rocky Hill Task Force, and members of our local growers associations, right? Like there are people outside of the task force who are putting these things together. The high school.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
So I did see you were here for most of the council meeting, and bless you for that. But you obviously heard our discussion about composting
Yes.
just moments ago. So I'm just wondering if there's anything you can share in your, are you confident of crowdfunding composting? Is there something that, I mean, how's that going in Rocky Hill from where you can see?
I'd love to share that slide with you. Why don't we move over into
Okay, yep.
composting? Yeah, and we can go in here. So I wanted to share this slide because this is an example of the sort of things that we do and the sort of resources that the task force can get for the town. We did a crowdfunding campaign.
Because I don't
Yeah.
think we want, maybe we don't want each property owner in the town of Rocky Hill starting their own compost thing. Are we talking about composting together?
So,
At a central location?
to be honest with you, I think that the composting challenge, let's say, is going to take a lot of different levers getting pulled, and it's not going to be one silver solution. I think we need a culture of composting, honestly, so that those of us who have yards are able to compost directly if they want to. Those of us who don't have yards have access to some other service, whether it's a community option, like an entire building gets together and uses a single composting unit, or people have access to a service, and that service can either be provided by the town or by the private sector. Although I think the ideal is to get as many people as possible involved in some method, right? So our goal as a task force is to try to promote all of these different options. There's actually, here, I'll pause this video so we don't get distracted. There's a food recovery hierarchy that's produced by the EPA that talks about the various different ways that one can reduce food waste. And actually, like, one of the most effective ways is to reduce consumption, right? Like, there's a ton of food waste that we can buy things that we don't use. And if you look at compost bins, a lot of them have, fruit that are absolutely fine that people are just throwing out. So, like, one thing is that we can all reduce the amount that we consume. If that food is perfectly good, it could go towards people, right? Can we develop mechanisms that distribute that food more effectively? I heard giving food to the dog. That is one example, right, of feeding animals, and also obviously livestock in farms. That is an effective way to deal with food scraps.
We're not going to be able to guarantee what, in other words, just for instance, GMO free, right? You might have some corn or vegetables that were GMO in your household, you're buying organic, but somebody else is buying everything that's available on the market. Now we go to the compost, we've now you have to realize that anything coming out of, grown with that compost, right, is no longer GMO-free?
So GMO doesn't impact the viability of food to be composted. By the time it gets to the state where it's decomposed, the origins of the food don't really matter that much. Then it gets down to it's nutrients that go into the soil. So I would say actually that a lot of the things that we produce are compostable, and it's making that happen is simply a question of training oneself to recognize when something can go into a bin. And it was hard when my family started to adopt it, and now it's second nature. Oh, okay, if in our particular case, we're using a home composting system, so meat doesn't go in the system, that goes in the trash. But literally everything else, like vegetable shavings, breads. The thing that we love about it is it's that food resource is actually valuable. It's not waste. It goes into a pile in my yard, and then 6 months later, if I'm turning it well, and I'm not a very good composter, there are people do a lot better, but after that period of time, I have something that enriches my soil. It goes onto my lawn. It goes into my garden, right? And that is a mindset I think people need to realize. Food is not waste. It's a resource that we could use if we just develop the mechanisms to unlock it.
Sure, and so that's educating everybody to understand that. So right now, like with COVID, they track it by checking the sewer system to see if it's in there, right? Do we have to worry about somebody who is sick with COVID throwing their food into this compost and then the COVID virus being in there?
Not at all. Yeah, it's not a concern. Because just think about it. It's this stuff is being broken down over a long period of time, and there's a lot of bacteria. There's a lot of animals going at it, processing it. It's exposed to intense heat. It is a safe thing to do. And it's something that humans have been doing for millennia, right? It's only relatively recently in our history that we have been kind of training ourselves and structuring our societies not to manage this resource. And while I'm on this slide, I'll just say, this is an example of the sort of education style of event that we have. We did a pumpkin smash last year where we got people to take their moldy old pumpkins, and in the case of this event, they were incredibly moldy because it was 3 weeks after Halloween, and smash them with sledgehammers, and that raw material ended up going into the compost bin behind the intergenerational food pantry garden, right? That was fun, yeah. And then the remainder got taken by local farmers, I believe, right? So that is a resource for them. And part of this was just, hey, it's a community event. We had cookies available and people were drinking hot cider, but it's also an education event. This is something you can do it in your home. We're doing it again this year. I'd be remiss if I didn't plug it. We're planning to do this November 4th. So please come out and join and bring a jack-o'-lantern if you've got one to smash. But this is the sort of thing that if more of us did this at a household level, then it would reduce the overall volume. I agree entirely with the mayor, though. It's not just the household level. We should be thinking about buildings that generate en masse this sort of stuff, like community centers, schools, government buildings, but restaurants in town. If you can promote adoption there, that's a massive amount of food scraps that go out of our waste stream. So, and then moving back a little bit. So what the composting campaign that we organized over the month, we did a crowdfunding campaign to raise money to basically unlock a new composting service provider in the town. They wouldn't cover Rocky Hill until they had 50 signups. So we're like, well, what if we just raise money for more signups to make this happen? We have everybody pay into a raffle, basically, and then the winners of the raffle get access to the program. One of the nice things is, through Sustainable CT, they have a fund that's like a community match fund. And for certain causes, it's a match plus. So in our case, we set ourselves an objective to raise $2,100. We ended up raising $2,300. They took that match, or took that amount and multiplied it by 1.5. And so the total amount that we're going to get is around $5,600. So that's a great way for us to like earn obviously a small amount of money when we're talking about a municipal budget, but it's also something that wouldn't have been possible if we had just left everybody to themselves to like sign up individually on this company's site. So in terms of data, this program, once it goes off, will let us know how people are responding to a campaign that they signed up for, right? We'll know the thinking is, and we still need to customize the exact approach, but one mechanism could be that we provide a composting incentive to residents, the winners of the raffle, and then they can use this money as they see fit to get the plan volume that they think is most appropriate. You can get a biweekly pickup, you can get a weekly pickup, you can, and seeing the success rate of that tells us, okay, if a household is truly bought into this, this is the volume that we might expect.
And with this vendor, and we talked about a couple different methods. So the way this vendor works is this isn't composting or putting it out in the yard. This is like a take it to your curb, either in some sort of bag or a cart, right?
Blue Earth operates through a curbside pickup program. So they pick up biweekly. They take the food to their distribution or their like center in Hartford, and then ultimately it goes to Quantum. And then residents or people who subscribe to the service get back on an annual basis a big bag of compost.
And so I'm a resident. I just have a different bin in my kitchen that I put my food scraps into, and I just bring that to the curb. Blue Earth picks it up.
They provide you with a bin, and goes right on your counter next to the sink.
And it would be interesting. I don't know if they would how they'd be able to do it, how much visibility they would have into it. But if we were able to work with them to get some statistics, because I guess at least for this first run, everybody who is participating in the program is part of our mini pilot here. That might be a way of getting a small subset of data too. If they could help us, get some visibility into what they're picking up, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. With a pilot, you try something and you get data. And then you can see what happens after.
Chris, if I could, because Derek and I have had that conversation, and we know that at this point, if we were as a town to approach this vendor, then we would have a contract violation. And that's why when the town manager, Derek, and I met, that this is actually a great way to approach that, because it's the resident that's choosing on their own that this is an incentive on their own. If the town were to contract with the vendor, then it was a different issue.
And not to add a note of complexity there, but I believe that there was a letter from DEEP.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
So
to
you've already taken
encourage the incentive.
Yep.
But it seems to me, this concept here of getting people to compost, but then putting on the curb to be taken away, that's problematic, I guess, with the vendor and all. But why not just encourage people? Okay, Chris talked about a bin. So in our household, we have two bins. We have the little 1 gallon one on our counter with the top on it, where you throw stuff in as you go. And then we have like the garbage pail size one in our backyard, which is where we dump it into. And then, but by the spring, we have some compost there that we put in our garden. Why not encourage that? I mean, you don't have this whole infrastructure of vehicles coming, picking it up, and all the extra numbers that go with that. Why not just focus on, we'll give you two bins, the little one for your counter and the big one for your backyard, and it's all self-contained.
So that is a great point, and that works very well for some people. Like, I home compost, right? Not everybody has a yard. Not everybody.
I'm not suggesting, so I'm talking about specifically to people who have yards, which is okay, again, you need a different model for apartments and condos, I get that. But let's start with single-family residences, because when you're talking about putting in a bin on the curb, I guess I'm picturing people, in houses. So let's start with that subset. It's a pretty big subset of the overall households, single-family residences. Why not just keep it contained within the household unit, and then you don't have this whole,
And if I-
vehicles
yeah.
come around and pick up your compost.
And if I could piggyback on that, I know that, I don't know if Joe is still here, but I know that part of his transfer station
hiding behind
program, he's hiding, I know, includes a concept just like that, so when he's ready to share that, I don't know if it's tonight, maybe when Mona reports back to us in 2 weeks, that is precisely what he's looking at, because that makes more sense. Right, and then it's voluntary. Then we're not breaching any contracts, and
Encouraging people to keep it at home. I can't see how that could be a breach of
Exactly.
obligation To not put other stuff on the curb.
Exactly, because we're not introducing a new vendor, and that was why, we're looking to expand space at the transfer station so that it all is kind of one program.
Right.
Yeah, and which is an excellent focus point for sustainable Rocky Hill, is to really move that project forward to the individual homeowners.
And I want to say, I think that there are going to be a lot of solutions here. And if people would be on board with doing home composting, the single-family homes, then that's fantastic. I think they get a lot of benefits from that. The waste gets out of our trash system, and the town doesn't have to pay for it. They get the benefits of compost. Composting is not for everybody. Some people just want a service. This is one mechanism, right? So, use this as an example of one mechanism or one thing that we are interested in as a task force. And you'll see here, a lot of the points that we're considering getting, we're hoping to get, were organized by the high school. If the DEEP grant comes through, that's by the town council. It's a combination of ways to try to build up this culture of composting. We're also doing work around pollinators. Again, the town council passed a pollinators resolution, I think, in the winter last year. We have a book club where people are talking about different methods for doing planting pollinator gardens. There's a native plant swap coming up this weekend. Another shameless plug, please come. And in terms of complete streets, the town council passed a complete streets resolution. If we continue to build sidewalks and bike lanes and improve accessibility for people with disabilities and continue to improve public transit, all of these things end up getting us points. So those were the three big buckets where we've gotten points. Here's my confusing and incredibly dense view of what we're doing. I wanted to show this because you can see on your screens that there's a bronze package, and that's the blue part that gets us up to 300 points. In order to get to silver, we need 500 points. Everything in between, or everything above the bronze are prospective point getters, right? So there are some things like the Farmers Market 2022. We've already done the activity. We just need to submit for it. There are things that are planned but not yet implemented. So the RHS composting program, it starts in the fall. And so, according to the rules of sustainable CT, you need to do at least part of the action in order to get the points for it. And then there are some things that are possible, right? We've put in a grant for Safe Streets for All. The town council has heard a proposal for a statement on equity. These are things that we haven't done yet, but if we do them, we get the points. If all of the things that we've submitted are accepted, and we do some of these prospective items on the top, if we get all of that done by April, then we can assume that we're going to make silver. Some of these things are outside our control, but I got to tell you, every time I come to a town council meeting, I hear about another activity that is a possible point getter that we can bring to sustainable CT, right? Y'all were discussing tax incentives for farmers, supporting local food production and food creators. That's a possible category I'd want to do research on. So here are some ideas for things that we can do to improve our certification. I have recommendations along planning, equity, and affordable housing. So this summer was the hottest summer on record within Connecticut, nationally, globally. I think I heard a statistic that it was the hottest summer in 10,000 years. And if you look at this, these lines, that is the average temperature in Connecticut since the first recording back in 1895, right? And you can see that it's constantly getting redder. We're constantly facing the hottest year on record, and in all likelihood, that's going to continue. A change in weather is not just about temperature. Warmer weather is also more likely to hold moisture, and we are more likely to face events like intense flooding or intense storms. And we saw the impact of that in the July flooding of the Connecticut River, which impacted so many farmers. So planning for this sort of thing you know, a lot of the activities that we're talking about are, okay, well, how do we keep carbon in our soil? How do we reduce our emissions? How do we stop and slow climate change? That's a lot of the conversation around sustainability. But like, a big part of sustainability is also responding to the reality that is here, right? And so one proposed action for the town council is this idea of doing a community resilience building workshop. The Nature Conservancy is a US-based nonprofit. They have a program where they help towns. They basically facilitate a workshop that brings town staff and community members together to say, okay, these are the problems that we're facing with these changing circumstances, and document them in such a way where you recognize the community's strengths and weaknesses, and that document is incorporated into the town's existing plans, right? So we have a plan of conservation and development, last written in 2015. I think it's up for renewal in 2025. That usually would incorporate something like this. The town apparently has a hazard mitigation plan. So this document would feed into that process. So the workshop is 3 hours and includes staff members and members of the community. In order to kick this process off, and I should say I've spoken about this with our town staff member, Jason Scott, and he thinks that this is feasible. In order to kick this off, we would need to write a letter. So some representative of the government, probably you, Madam Mayor, would write a letter committing to some sort of action to carry out the community resilience building workshop within a year.
Can I just jump in?
Yes, sir.
I saw the letter, so I got online, I did some research. Norwalk did a pretty comprehensive job on this, with this particular program. And I think and I did talk to Kim, I sent it to Kim, had her do a little, get her opinion. I think this would probably be a very good program for us to update our plan of conservation and development, as was mentioned. And also, we're updating currently now our hazard mitigation plan regionally. So we can probably get a lot of things done that we need to do, that we were looking to consult out with this program. And it ties into just about everything that we're doing. In addition to tying into a town-wide strategic plan that I had mentioned a while back that I think we should start looking into doing. So I think this particular program might be very beneficial for us.
And so you have specific staff that you would assign to attend that meeting?
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
Yeah, it would be, of course, community development.
Yeah,
Me,
Okay.
and finance, because everything involves money, as we all understand.
Gotcha.
So, affordable housing is in the Sustainable CT framework. So we have a plan for developing affordable housing, and in a very recent session, the town council decided to create an ordinance that creates an affordable housing committee. That got us points alone, creating an affordable housing committee. You should know that if we increase our affordable housing, for every 0.25% increase, we get 10 points. So that's a sizable amount of points that we could get. And then I know this group likes specific actions that one could take. So some of the actions recommended by Sustainable CT involve things like create dedicated funding to affordable housing development, change the way that we do zoning, educate residents on accessory dwelling units. There are specific items in this list that we can go through. And to be clear, I'm not asking for anything tonight. I'm just saying that these are in the menu of options, and I hope that we can present this to the Affordable Housing Committee once it is created. So my only recommendation to you all is staff that Affordable Housing Committee so we can get moving.
Well, I'm glad that you have this slide, because I was a little confused as to why you sent us a letter asking us to develop an affordable housing committee when, in fact, we've already done that ordinance. So I'm glad to see that you know that we're doing that. I was just surprised that you would send us a letter.
So that wasn't me.
Well, it was your task force.
That was by...
It was your secretary.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
okay, but you know. So it's,
I
okay.
agree. Yes, we have... we've done the action required to get the points. Now we need to populate the body. Yeah.
Right. But it's a process, right? So we're on it. But it can't happen overnight.
Of course.
Right, okay.
Of course.
What is the number for 2023? Do you have the number or no?
I don't think it's been released yet.
Okay.
You can see that we've been pretty much static.
It's flat, yeah.
This is some variation year to year, but
And you should know that it's not unique to Rocky Hill. It's very, very difficult for every municipality. Every municipality is having this challenge. I think you probably know how many municipalities actually fit the state's targeted 10%. It's really nil. And so I think we did some type of survey one time, whereas we would have to, not us, but just by way of comparison, if you took all of Century Hills concierge and flipped those to affordable, that's what it would take for us to meet the affordable housing. So really the goal for us, and I know I've spoken to Kim Ritchie about this, and it's something that I do when I speak with developers, even when they're coming in to do a business on Silestine Highway, would you consider, deeding in perpetuity that the one or two apartments as deed restricted, but you're never going to get there with that, right? So it's so complicated to reach this number. We would love to, and we'll continue to try, but even with all the new apartments coming in,
right.
It's just really hard unless we have those developers who are willing to deed restrict, even when they're only building one or two housing units. And what it would be good if we can get the state to say things that we already have in our stock, that the amount of rent or the size of the home fit into that affordable housing definition, because then I think many municipalities could reach that level. There are a lot of accessory dwellings, right, that should really be included in that calculation, and I think we'd be surprised to see how accessible and affordable our stock is. Yeah, rent. It's just hard to meet the current definition, so maybe even redefining what we include in that, and
Yeah, so the 10% number, first of all, it's like, I want to have inflation at 2%. Yes, I do. And who said that? Somebody said it in the monetary policy. They said 2% is a great number because that's what the inflation rate looked like for the last 20 years. Now, if you look at inflation in the last 3, 4, 5, and then you say, okay, does it make sense? Should 3% be our target? That's how state should be looking at this. I mean, 10%, I don't know, I shouldn't say this. My wife is not going to like it. I might just pass away before you get to 10%. It's very high. I mean, if you think about Rocky Hill, right? And the reason I say this is, if you think about Rocky Hill, how much construction you can do here at this point, I mean, you tell me, where are you going to build? I mean, it's unrealistic. That's all I'm saying. After all these metaphors I'm throwing out at you.
Well, there's competing interests.
yeah.
Farmland preservation versus
Right.
letting the developer get it and build on it, and so it's a challenge.
Yeah, because so the state what needs to do is or we need to do, if state is not going to do it, we should have a realistic goal. I mean, 10% is not a realistic goal. I'm going to come out and just say it, right? If nobody's going to say it. I'm going to say it. And the thing is, maybe it's 7%, maybe it's 6.5, but it's not 10 right now. Maybe it is in 10 years. Right now, I mean, I believe in small goals and achieving those goals. At this point, it looks like I can't achieve anything. And that's really kind of demoralizing to me. And I don't want to demoralize. So can we actually set realistic goals?
well, so one of the
Sorry.
please.
Yeah, so further, I guess 2 points. So one is, I think the reason for the 10% is by statute, the provision that allows affordable, quote unquote, affordable housing developers to override local planning and zoning ordinances is if it is a town that is below that 10% threshold. So that's by statute, and that's sort of the trigger point is that's how it is that developers like Vessel, for example, have this ability to override local plan and zoning regs because we're below the 10%. So that, I assume that 10% goal here for sustainability tracks that. That's a state threshold. The other part of that is further to the point that the mayor just made. There's this acronym called NOAA, which is naturally occurring affordable housing. It doesn't count. So
Yeah.
for purposes of this 10%, the only quote-unquote affordable housing is if it is formally kept affordable through some mechanism, whether it's, it's state housing, it is deed restricted, there's some actually legal mechanism that locks it in as affordable versus houses or apartment units that just happen to be cheap by market forces. Those don't count.
No, I completely take your point. I'm just saying, I totally understand now why something is in place. But what I'm saying is, are we looking to actually chip away at the problem, or are we saying this is what we aspire for? We might not ever get there, but let's just aspire for that. Or are we going to say, hey, in the next 2 years, we want to be at 6%? That's what I would do if I was running the state. But I'm not, obviously.
It does.
If I may.
See how engaged right now? Because I have one question. The 10 points per 0.25% increase,
Yes.
what is the number of affordable housing that equals 0.25%? Like, how many would we have to add in a year or in 5 years, whatever? What is that 0.25%?
I don't have that number.
Is that 0.25% of the total number of housing units?
Yeah, so say we have
So
about
it's
I think we heard earlier there's about 8,000 units in
Yeah,
town.
like 86.
1% would be 800,
Yeah.
and
So
a
a
quarter
quarter
percent
of that.
therefore would be 200.
Okay. Thank you.
So we need 200 units?
Yes.
What you just said?
So
200? No, 1% would be 80 of 8,000. You said 8,000 units?
There's 8,000
Yeah,
units.
1% is 80.
Sorry, what
So
I
a
said,
quarter
I
would
said
be
800.
20.
Right, 10% of 8,000 is 80. Right, Corpo, right, yep.
You're right.
Missed decimal point. Good catch, Mr. Accountant.
But that would also be
it was very impressive, I have to say.
that would also be though if we just were in a vacuum and 20 new units popped out of nowhere. I think one of the things on there has to do with when we're building new developments, are we above or below 10%? Because if you add those 20, but you're adding in 200
Right.
market units,
You're going the wrong direction.
you're adding more
you are.
stock.
Although you're doing the right thing.
Percentage is going down.
You are doing the right thing, but you're moving in the wrong direction. And that's what it's called, like completely misaligned, incentives and goals and all. Anyway, I'm not going to solve.
But that would be one of the
And,
aspects to try.
and for the record, we recognize this is not your mandate. You're just, so, it's not you.
It's a number that you'll constantly chase with a developer. You're constantly chasing that number because
Yeah.
you get a development in for 214 units, only 10% of them are affordable. Another 90-unit complex comes in, 30% of them. So that number, it's always being chased. Affordability is always
So
being chased.
this is not an immediate thing. To the councilor's point, it is not that we need to make 10% in order to get our points. In order to get points under the Sustainable CT framework, we can get points for actually growing the stock according to however it is calculated. And then there are specific policies that we can adopt as a town, including those on this slide. And I can give you more details. These are definitely summaries.
Thank you.
These, regardless of whether they are successful, for the purposes of our certification, they get us points, right? So I think everybody recognizes that this is a challenge to meet the goal. Here are some concrete recommendations from this body of how we would go about doing it.
I just had a quick question on one of the bullets. And forgive my ignorance, but it says allow unrelated people to live in a single household. Do we not allow that now, or did I miss?
Where is that?
It's like the
Slide.
fourth or
Allow unrelated.
fifth bullet point, I think it was.
I think that refers to for neighbors that are zoned single family, what is a family? And I thought the Supreme Court ruled on that.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, I don't think we even addressed that.
Okay.
in zoning. I
just
I
found
could
it.
be wrong.
I saw
but-
it listed there. I'm a little confused by that.
Yeah, that's a
You have to
problem.
qualify for single-family residence. There was a big case in Hartford about that not that long ago where unrelated people were living and there was legal challenge to that.
If you like, I can send you the full.
No, I just top of
line.
your head. Like, am I missing the point, or is there another part of that that I'm just not getting? Because
Off the top of my head, I'm not able to.
I didn't think we're not allowing that. So okay.
But there are concrete details in the proposal here. Sorry, is this? Okay, yeah, it's showing up.
That'd be a good.
So, I think I think that is the recommendation that I have, and here are some specific things that we could do, recognizing that this is a thorny topic, and which is why the Affordable Housing Committee were so excited to support that. Equity is the final component of this. So I've said it before, and this is not an immediate action for the town council, but you charge the Commission on Inclusion and Innovation with coming up with an equity statement. Once you pass that, that gets us points. And I will say that, as I understand it, the Commission presented a packet with a list of topics raised by the town for areas for action. If you choose to address any of those actions, and I have not seen that list, I would like to see that list. Whatever issue you tackle, even if you take that list aside and you just say, here's an issue that we think is important for the town, here's a policy that we think is important for the town. If you pursue addressing the policy equitably, which means identifying areas where residents who are ordinarily not involved in the process can be involved in the process, that can qualify you for points under this system. So Complete Streets, I love that policy as an example, because the whole idea is you're taking this planning around municipal infrastructure and you are committing to going out to the homes and neighborhoods where people are living who don't ordinarily come to these town council meetings, right? And saying, here's our plan. What do you think about it? You're taking active steps to engage people who ordinarily aren't involved in the process, right? Doing that sort of behavior gets the town points under this framework.
So like the walk a mile in my shoes kind of thing?
Yes, we've gotten points for that in the past.
Okay.
I would say that's not an example of a policy. That's a citizen
An event.
engagement activity.
Okay.
Equity policy is like identifying a problem and then involving people who are ordinarily not involved, or dedicating extra resources to people who are ordinarily not the focus of policy. But this is all me talking and proposals that I have. One question I have for this group is, where should the task force be focusing according to the town council? What are your sustainability objectives? And do they fall under this? Even if they don't, let's talk about what to do, because number 13 is innovative strategies and practices, which, as far as I can tell, is like invent your own sustainability action. So these are, the sky's the limit.
I think that's a great question, right? Because I was thinking the same thing. So it's like I go to my boss in January, and in December actually, but okay, whatever. Details is not important. He says to me like, what are we going to do in 2024? And if I have like 13 things, I don't think anything is going to get accomplished. So what I do, or generally the approach is like, okay, we should have 3 or 4. And normally, they have to align with a larger goal, right? Like the enterprise goal, right, as we call it, right? And so what is the enterprise goal in this situation, right? The enterprise goal in this situation is probably a couple of things or 3 things. I'm just picking the number 3 because I like it. That's all. It could be 2. But no more than like probably 3 or 4. And so if you go with 3, then something we have already started working on, right? That makes sense, which we have a foundation on, right? So, and I'm again, like I'm gonna leave it to like everybody to decide what those 3 things are. But I would like to work personally, or you to work together on something which is already in progress and we have laid a foundation for. Because again, I want to see tangible progress and results like before I leave this council at least. So what I'm saying is essentially if we can agree on like 3 things which are like for example, let's just say affordable housing for that example, right? And because we talked about it, at least I talked about it. If we say like, hey, Derek and the sustainability group, we can agree that okay, if we can make like, I don't know, a 1% increase in 3 years, again, to whatever, take my example from when I was speaking prior. Yes, okay, now we can work on it and we're already making progress. Or we can say we can create like 50 units or 100 units or 200, something tangible which you are already working on and then get us through. What I don't want to do is like get lost in like a lot of different things, right? And again, there is an argument to be made that, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. But I guess you can do those two things, and then maybe you can have your phone up. But I guess that's about it. I think after doing three things, I can't pay attention anymore. That's my just to align with existing initiatives on this council. I think that's in principle that's where I want to go. But hey,
Just to add to what Councilor Prakash is indicating, I mean, I like that thought because we're staying within our objectives or our goals for that year or for that semester, for that whatever time frame we're talking about, right? But I think we want to add also one more thing, which is pretty typical in today's day and age of corporate world, is a stretch goal, all right? Stretch goal.
A stretch goal.
So we want to add those things that we know we can accomplish to show progress at 100%, right? But then we want to have a stretch goal that most likely we probably know we're not going to accomplish, but we want to know that we're striving toward it.
that's a great point. I think the stretch goal analogy, it works for me as well. Right? I think we can have some aspirational goals, right? But have like three, at least like tangible where we can say, hey, yeah, we got it, right?
10% is a stretch goal, I believe.
Stretch, very,
No,
very
the
stretch.
composting thing jumps out to me because we already have that as a problem, and we've got to figure it out.
There you go. I think
And
that's a
we've
great
got
point.
our backs are against the wall, and we've got some partners out there that aren't going to help us solve it apparently.
And you heard my pitch for that, and I mean, again, the self-contained at the household level, because, you know, again, the program that was under discussion with Deep, I mean, it just seems so unwieldy. There's so many moving parts to get this stuff away from people's houses, moved, sorted, processed, when, again, just dump it in your yard. I mean, you're accomplishing the same thing without all of that stuff. And if you gave people, I talk about two bins, the small one on your counter and the bigger one in your backyard. If you gave people those two bins, for example, here you go, you qualify for whatever, knock yourself out. It doesn't cost you anything. And, you know, and we'll even give you a shovel for whatever. Here's your kit, and you've accomplished. Again, maybe not quite as much as the big program would do, but at a tiny fraction of the cost and without the externalities of all this physical infrastructure of vehicles driving around in new plants.
Can I say I'd be the first to sign up for like a town-provided composting shovel? I think that would be some great swag. And I will say, speaking as a resident, pay-as-you-throw is not incompatible with what you've described, right? The idea is to incentivize people towards the cheapest option, which also happens to be the best policy option for the town. And if it is cheaper, if you buy fewer bags because you are composting more, then that is a financial incentive to the resident to compost. My 2 cents, I'll throw it in there. This is supposed to be about you guys.
I just had
No.
I had a few quick. But before I get that, so to your point, Bill, my wife told me this. Suppose you could throw your eggshells directly in the garden and it'll start providing benefits immediately. There's some. So you don't have to wait for composting. You can just throw them right in the vegetable garden.
Yes.
Helps immediately. So that's even beyond composting. That's, I don't know what you would call that, but that's before pre-composting maybe. I don't know, but we just made up a new term. One housekeeping thing and then two topics maybe to, if you could talk about, maybe if you can focus more on. Josh, talk about the timeline of the bylaws. I would have thought those would have been done by now because those are kind of things you need to get done in order to do everything else, kind of. I know you have a vacancy you need to fill, but you kind of need bylaws in order to fill that and a variety of these other things. So just talk about where we are in that and how quickly that's going to get.
Our bylaws are complete. They were finished in early 2023 and submitted. As far as I know, they're still being processed.
Okay.
Being legal?
I don't know their current status.
I saw them, the revised ones, before I left on vacation, I think. I think they need to be tweaked a bit to really mirror the resolution that was passed. Then by the resolution, they have to go to the town attorney. So as I think I sent an email earlier today.
Yeah, we got something today.
I am going to
Late
get.
today.
Yeah, I'll get those out to the town attorney this week for his review, and then back to the town council, hopefully for the next meeting.
Okay. And so two items that I personally want to because I in preparation for, I went through a bunch of your meetings. I didn't watch every meeting, but I watched a number of your meetings, went through your agenda. So you could tell me maybe if I missed it, or maybe this is something the coming year. But I'm a big proponent of solar energy.
Yes.
I have solar panels. I'm getting battery. I've told the story a million times. I charge my car. I charge my mower, my snow blower, my leaf blower, all with solar energy. There's tons of roofs in this town that don't have solar panels that could be generating energy. I don't know where that fits into the whole CT sustainability scale and getting points and things, but maybe that's even beyond that as an important.
No,
factor.
it's right in there.
it is,
Action
okay.
7, and I'm really glad.
Yeah, I see that number. Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know specifically what gets you point.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of things that can get you points here. Campaigns by the town to encourage residential adoption of solar, great. Like educational work, great. I think there's policy work that you can do to make it easier for people to do. One of our task force members, Robert Downs, wants to organize a green energy forum in Rocky Hill in which like electeds and other experts can talk about the benefits of this. Maybe we pull in the Connecticut Green Bank and other solar providers to basically like introduce residents to this opportunity, which gets them access. So
Right.
absolutely, there's a lot of enthusiasm for that.
And to me, I just saw this tonight, so you may have be talking about this and I just missed it. So just educate me, please. Is water reclamation, the ability to, the water barrels to get water that's coming off your roof and things. I know a lot of towns have programs where they'll give away or have discounted barrels that you can connect to your downspouts and things. Do we have a program like that? If not, is that part of all this perhaps? And
I'm unfamiliar with it. Let me research it and get back to you.
So MDC did do that a few years ago. I know we got our rain barrel, and there is a company that if you speak to Kim O'Rourke in Middletown, that's the easiest way, and she'll hook you up if you're interested with the company who will come and they will sell the rain barrels, they'll sell the composting bins and a little event, and then people can hook those up to their gutters.
Yeah, because this year's maybe not the best example with all the rain, but there are certain years where it'd be nice to have that as a backup when you have a dry spell and you're not having to, pay MDC, out the wazoo for
Rainwater is better for gardens anyways, has more nitrogen.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
great, thank you.
So I'm just curious, like all the 13 items there, boxes, like when I start looking and reading those out, has the committee finished looking at everything the town is already doing? Are we getting credit for all kinds of things that we're already doing? Or are we still in that process of seeking out, searching out, identifying and saying, hey, we do this under item 10?
So we do have a process. Our town staff member, Jason Scott, talks to different departments and identifies, hey, this thing that you're doing is eligible for points. We're constantly learning more. As I said, when I sit in town council meeting, there's more. But yes, it's not just resident organized. We should have a mechanism whereby town actions that we're already doing get us points.
Yeah, I've had this discussion with Pam Roach in the past. We've received no points for the 400 acres of farmland we have preserved over the years, which is, I don't think that's. I think we should be up by gold standard by now. The acreage we have preserved. We received no points for the 3 megawatt solar farm that we have because there were too old.
I think it was date related.
Yeah,
because
it's
sustainable.
date-related.
So Green Bank back in the day used to keep a chart, right? And we were there on so many things, and they kept, saying, "Hey, why don't you look at sustainable CT?" And that's when Sustainable CT started, and we said, "Hey, we already have this chart of look at all these great things," and they're like, "No, we're going to start."
rolling point system.
Yeah,
so
and
we don't get points for dark skies initiatives that were passed in 2017. We have to constantly do more things. So just make another solar farm.
That's all.
And I would
Legit, that is a thing that we can do. We can put solar panels on school systems and reduce their bills and get points.
And I would suggest that in any of these buckets, when we're making progress and gaining points, we should call out, we should restate what we're doing already. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, we should not exclude the positive. We should be stating our positives along with our goal, our additional add-ons that we want, that we would like to accomplish. I don't want to lose sight of the fact of the things that we're doing well. Because this community is doing a lot of things really well, we should be calling that out.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the as we've talked about, these 13 measures are so broad that as long as you're taking certain steps, it kind of seems like you could perhaps make a case for a lot of them, as long as you're doing things like trying to include people who aren't normally part of the process. So it almost seems like I'm looking at number 2, thriving local economies, supporting local businesses. That's something that we've put an emphasis on in the last couple councils. Not something that you would traditionally put under the framework, perhaps, of at least environmental sustainability, builds community resilience and all that. But that might be something where, as Jason or other members of town staff are working on a policy, they do a check that says, well, is there a way that we could do this under a framework that would give us points as a carrot to adopting more best practices, being more inclusive with our decision making. And then we might just organically pick up a number of these things where previously we wouldn't have been introducing those ideas as part of the process, which I think is probably part of the goal of what they're trying to do. And the other piece that I'd like to see kind of a focus on is more things at a neighborhood scale. Individuals can compost, and most of these are going to have, there's not going to be one silver bullet. There's going to be a lot of different things meeting people where they're at. So I compost in my yard, some people might not want to, but we need to think about things that can work at a neighborhood scale, whether that is composting, whether that is things like solar. Are there ways that the town can help bring that expertise together or cut through red tape, engage state agencies, people like NRCS, kind of advocate for our community? Because that'll help build local community and also helps people scale up, because economies of scale work. And the other piece that I do see missing, or that's a challenge, as a former president of a condo board, the most thankless elected job I've ever had. It's hard for it to get, and I don't know that the town has an exact role here other than advocacy, but we have a lot of condos in town, we have apartments in town as well, but it's hard for a condo association to try to do things like rooftop solar or energy saving things. I remember trying to do energy audits, but you really are trying to negotiate with so many different unit owners. If there's a way of coordinating things there, you can knock out 100 homes in a way that it's like if it could be done, it was a lot more efficient than having to go, through 100 individual unit owners who all live in separate roofs in different parts of the town. Things like that, I think, would be helpful. And then also things that we can do that I'm personally interested in is different skill sharing. If we had like a maker space or DIY spaces, tool shares, things like that. I just think probably just a matter of how do we organize things in a way, borrowing what other people are doing as best practices and trying to make our community resilient by just teaching sharing our skills, and just kind of increasing our own resilience by more people knowing how to do more things.
Well,
Fixing your own stuff.
We have Rocky Hill Buy Nothing.
Yeah, which is a great.
So
Fantastic,
stuff that would end up
only good
being
part of
thrown
Facebook.
out, right? You put it on there and say, hey, who would like it?
Yep.
And I think that works. I think my sense is that's working fantastic.
I think it's a great example of things outside of the town framework, but fits into this mold. Yeah, the only good part of Facebook, I think.
Well said.
Yeah. I think, okay, anyone else? So this is my takeaway. If we look at the resolution, you guys are charged with providing recommendations, and you've provided a phenomenal presentation, so we're very grateful for that. And then the second thing is you're charged with carrying out sustainability projects as shall be assigned by the town council. And it sounds like we're looking to identify 3, 2, 3, 4, something like that. And from what I've heard, the composting, and I would add to that recycling education is one. Potentially solar energy is another. And I had water reclamation, but I think, Chris, that probably goes to organizing community spaces that increase resiliency at that grassroots level. If we wanted to make that a third, and then potentially the stretch could be the affordable housing. And I just want to go back on my notes for that composting education. I have the just dump it in your yard courtesy of Counselor Sullivan. So that might work.
T-shirts.
But you know that is a great idea, because I really like how you put it, like all the infrastructure you're creating around it, like all these people and vehicles are going to come in. I mean, that's really a very vivid picture, and you want to get rid of that probably. I mean, if you.
it's genius, really.
It really is well put. I think,
resonates.
although, like, you're right, like, it's not completely inclusive, because you will leave out, like, but you don't have to solve for everyone. You can start solving, for one part of that equation, and then you can expand it later yeah.
And you're right,
the rest.
because that's part of DEEP's goal is, and the municipality's goals is that you work within certain demographics and you test each one of those, whether it's your single family households and then you move to your apartments and, you move around, but you have to keep it small little pilot programs.
Yeah, and I think that's where you keep accomplishing, and you keep patting yourself on the back a little bit and keep working on it, because otherwise it becomes seriously, I don't know, I don't want to overstate that point, but yeah.
And I think the other thing is, I don't think any of us sitting here are in a rush to get to silver by April. So do not feel pressured. And I feel like we're just moving so rapidly trying to get to that silver. And there's really not a need for that, because what's happening is we're overlooking basic community local needs, right? And right now our needs certainly are with the composting and the recycling, and then the solar energy, the organizing community spaces, increasing the resiliency. Those are all, those are great goals, but they're not. It's an exigent circumstance like the materials management is. And so if unless anyone has something else to add that we did not discuss, I would put it out that those are the ones to. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
and I don't know if it was on your list, but the community resiliency building workshop sounds like it aligned pretty well with what we're doing for the new POCD, and might have a cost savings instead of consultants.
Yes.
Not sure, the more people learn about those programs, sometimes they stop being free. I don't know if that's the case with this one or not, but sooner might be better, on that one as well.
Yeah. I mean, that can certainly go under that umbrella.
So,
One quick thing,
would would I be directed to formalize that letter?
Yeah, certainly. I think we're comfortable with that, because that goes under that increasing resiliency. And if we're already working on the emergency, I forget what that word was.
So I could put that in letterhead.
Yeah.
Tweak it so under my signature.
I think so. Do you
Send it
guys
out
agree?
to Alan.
It's
All right.
it's just organizing a workshop, right?
Thank you.
But if you guys are comfortable with that, I think that should be our charge of this task force. And it certainly gives them something to work on. And then,
We have
Sorry,
to
Derek.
discuss the makeup. I mean, that's, the bylaws are in, they're going back for tweaking, they're coming back to go to council.
and when we get them, we can.
And then when we get those, then that should bring us past November, maybe January, some time frame. And that, at that point, a more normal constitution of the committee with representation, as we
course.
do with all our committees.
Of course.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, so the main priorities, as I heard them, were composting and recycling, solar, affordable housing was a stretch. Was there water retention?
Well,
Water
there is, but under the organizing the community spaces to increase resiliency,
community spaces, right?
where we would put the water reclamation, we would put that program where we're going to send the letter. Yeah.
Well, I know it's late, and you folks have provided a huge amount of your time, so I'm just saying thank you for spending so much time with us, and we are, it's a really eager community behind the sustainability stuff, so I'm
We so
looking forward to working
appreciate
with
your
you all.
passion.
Thank you
Very,
for a
very
great presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome job, Derek.
Thanks very much.
Okay. I don't even have an agenda. Oh, we're going to the mayor's report. We have so much to do. And if it's okay with you, I will, so little time. I'm going to skip the mayor's report. I will just give a shout out to the Rocky Hill Fire Department, because they did have a couple of really important things that came up. One was the 9/11 ceremony, and then, of course, the other one was the fundraiser for the scholarships in the name of Captain Jim Lamar. That second memorial fundraising golf tournament was held, and it was a huge success. And so I just want to give a big shout out to Chief Garahy and all of his folks for doing those things. And just for all of our veterans and our veteran families, Stand Down 2023 is going to be September 22nd from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. up at the Veterans Complex. The 25th anniversary of the Royal Blues Marching Band Show, September 30th at 3 p.m. That's going to be an awesome day. Just a big shout out to Connecticut Street Legends, who had their annual Rocky Hill Food Pantry car show, and they donate that money to our food pantry, which is, we're so very grateful to them and all of the folks who sponsored that program. Let me see. We have, I think now I've counted up to 8 new businesses that have announced that they're opening up on the Silas Deane Highway. So I'm glad to see revitalization efforts happening there. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. And I have to give a big shout out to the Commission on Inclusion and Innovation. They had a Mile in My Shoes, which was a great time walking and talking. And they truly believe, as we do, that conversations build trust, and trust builds a strong sense of belonging. So thank you to them. And just the last thing, make sure you sign up for the Rocky Hill Education Foundation 5K, which will be November 18th this year at the Veterans Home. And on November 1st, registration opens for the North Pole Express. So Santa is coming back to town. And that's it.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to town manager's report.
I will be deferring my report to the acting town manager. I was gone for 2 weeks. I came back Wednesday, so Mona will be giving 99% of the update.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I will be brief, but I think definitely saying the shout outs. I have to say for that week or 2 weeks that Ray was away, the staff, the support staff, especially the directors, are wonderful. Brian Collette, he was on the phone every day giving me the latest of what's going on in town. Chief Garahy was wonderful working with the cooling center. We actually ended up going from the 4th all the way to that Friday extended, and he was on top of things, and so wonderful help from the staff. I'll give them a lot of credit. We touched on the RLE, which is the lighting program that we're working with for Eversource. So worked with the facilities director, Eversource, RLE. This looks like a great program for us, and hopefully we'll bring that to finance. It's about $1 million of just lighting and improved mechanicals. It's a great program. What else? We continue to keep the ship afloat, looking at the Hayes Road. Worked with Community Development Director, with Steve Sopelak, with our civil engineer. We're going back and looking at a different approach to that. They've come out with phases of sidewalks. Actually had our recent bid vendor go out and look at the site, found some problem areas that may want to work around, so we're coming back with another reiteration on that, but making progress. And worked with Cedar Hollow. Just they want to be in touch and let them know. We're trying to put together a list of all the permits that they had and the progress of their level of completion, and they're definitely well over 90% complete. So it'll be a good report to put together for them.
Is that all?
And we finished the audit, but
And
that
you
was a
finished the audit
finance, not a
and the audit
manager.
at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, nice, fantastic. Just two items. We have distributed an employee survey. I think it was 2 weeks ago, before I left. Yeah.
Yes. Collected the data.
I should go back to Scotland, I think. Asking, different amenities that maybe employees might want. So there were a number of questions, a number of things that we had suggested. There were several ideas that we will be coming back to the town council to inform and to ask to implement. Starting with the easy ones first, the lowest cost ones, no cost ones. So stay tuned for that, probably next meeting. And also, I want to recognize, give a shout out to Stuart Topliff. He was awarded the Rosalind Johnson Award by the International Association of Assessing Officials. The Rosalind Johnson Award is named after Rosalind Johnson for her years of service and dedication to that organization. And the award is presented to a person who has contributed to the fundraising and other public relation activities of IAAO over the years. The award recognizes those who advanced the mission to the contribution of time, effort, talent, and resources. And Stuart showed me this beautiful glass award that he received. So a shout out to Stuart. Good job. That's all I have.
I have a question. for them? You sure? So you spurred something, Mona. You talked about Eversource. We had a plan of changing out our like our lighting in parking lots and all that.
Oh, yeah, it's part of this. It's wonderful.
Pardon?
I said it's all part of this plan. It's all rolled into that.
The
We looked at
LED?
the LED lightings in the high school field and the parks.
And we're halfway through, halfway done, all the way done?
No.
Well, this particular program, do you want to go with it? No, it's going to pick up on those that we had not completed and wasn't part of that original rollout. Did you want to?
And these are items that were included or have been included in the capital improvement budget. So this is an opportunity to capitalize on a tremendous amount of incentives that will be offered by Eversource to greatly reduce the cost. So I think we need to jump on this as soon as we can, because these incentives will be gone by March.
Yeah.
And then lighting, in the topic of lighting, didn't we do blue lighting for autism? Is that coming up?
No, we had that.
We had that, I'm sorry.
What's coming up is purple lighting
Purple lighting.
Right, we
for
did orange.
Alzheimer's.
We did orange, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Is there any action that you need to pursue the program with Eversource from the council?
I believe it should probably go through finance because it's going to be looking at a contract and multi-year. So we'll bring it out there, but I also mentioned it at government ops once we want to watch it.
And
So
we're-
probably the October meeting.
Correct.
so we think that one of the October meetings or the
Yes.
The
first
October
one?
finance meeting.
For finance, and then
So probably
full
the
council.
second town council meeting, because I don't think we'll have finance between now and the first meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
The only thing I want to say is I don't know if we have to suspend the rules for a minute because Mimi, I don't know if you were trying to chime in because we can't hear you if you are, and if you wanted to make any comments with respect to that sustainable Rocky Hill presentation. I just feel badly because I don't know if you're trying to chime in. So if you were, we can suspend the rules because we can't hear you.
Looks like she's okay.
So you're okay. I think you're okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're going to move on to executive session.
Madam Mayor,
go
like to
ahead.
make a motion to move to executive session pursuant to, for the purpose of, pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 1-200, 6A, we will now enter into executive session for a discussion concerning the performance and evaluation of the town manager. With the town manager's consent, this discussion will take place in executive session. First, to include town legal counsel, Attorney Duncan Forsyth with Halloran and Sage, and the town's Director of Human Resources and Legal Compliance, Dana McGee. Then, to include the town manager himself, along with legal counsel and the town's director of human resources and legal compliance.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mimi? Okay.